We can all choose to be happy in the moment. We can all choose to be grateful with what we've got. But invariably, we're always looking at the external validation of who we are. And it's all about our
The midlife
internal
crisis.
growth.
What is it?
Looking at what's
How does it
really going
happen?
on for us.
And what can we do about it? In this episode, we'll find out. I'm Jeremy Klein, and this is Change Work Life. And welcome to Change Work Life, the show that's all about beating the Sunday evening blues and enjoying Mondays again. My guest this week is Kim Searle. Kim is the author of Midlife is Not a Crisis, and in this episode we dive really quite deeply into what the midlife crisis is all about, what it's telling us, and how we go about responding. Here's the interview. Hi Kim, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you very much for asking me, Jeremy. Very excited.
Can we just start with, can you tell us what it is that you do?
I market myself as a midlife mentor, and that is actually an umbrella term that I'm using for all the different skills that I have: hypnotherapy, NLP, coaching, and some others that I use.
NLP being
neuro-linguistic programming. It's been around probably for nearly 20 years, but it's becoming more prominent. And all it is about the way we speak, the way we think, and the way we act. So it's the science behind all that.
So as a midlife mentor, is this something that then you have changed to in midlife, or is this something that you've kind of always done?
No, this is very recent. I came up with this last year when I left work and decided to set up on my own again, because many years ago I worked as a therapeutic coach, helping people with challenges that they were facing. And I've always wanted to go back out on my own since qualifying as a cognitive hypnotherapist back in 2011, and I'm finally doing it. But I wanted something that was targeting the midlife journey, if you like, because I think it's such a major area in our lives that's really, it's ridiculed, it's mocked, but not really understood.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because it's something that seems to me, it's something of a cliche. It's, you go and buy the sports car or have the affair with someone who's much younger or take 6 months off and go to India to discover yourself or all that sort of thing. I mean, it just comes across as a bit of a cliche. I mean, is there substance to it? I mean, what's, when you get down to it, what is the midlife crisis? What's going on? Actually, when does it start for us, first of all?
Okay, well, I'll start with that one. It can start at any time because all it is where you suddenly realise that what you're doing isn't really what you want to be doing. And you're asking yourselves the big questions. Who am I? What am I doing? And where am I going? Most often, though, it tends to happen from 40 plus, although I did mine at 36. And it's where your life just comes crumbling around you. There's been a trigger point. It may be a bereavement. It may be a relationship breakup. It may be something to do with your work, redundancy, or, passed over for promotion. There's a trigger that has gone on that has just crushed your world almost. And you're like, what's going on? What's that all about? And it makes you start thinking. Now, people seem to think that it can be an instant thing. It can take a few years to really, become a problem. The trigger may have been, 3, 4, 5 years ago, but it's only now that it's beginning to cause you a problem. And it's at that point when you start to find people taking drastic action to change their lives in some way, because they think their external world, if it's better, it will change things. But I need to be very clear, it doesn't. It's what's going on in our internal world that's the problem.
So when you say there's a trigger, I mean, that sounds quite dramatic. Is there always something that you can point to that has this effect, or can this be just a sort of a gradual realization that finally you get to something that makes you think, nah, actually something's got to change here?
I haven't got any scientific evidence to back it up yet, Jeremy. So, in my experience, it can be either. But generally, there will have been a trigger that if you look back, whenever I've seen a client, they're coming to me for a reason. But when you start to track back, something has happened to them in their past that they think they've got over, that they've dealt with, that it's not a problem. But it's actually sort of festered and grown and just builds dissatisfaction all round, I think. Is that true? I don't know, but it's certainly my experience with the clients I've seen and my own personal experience. But either way, you start that period of dissatisfaction, which is possibly what you're referring to, this idea that it just suddenly grows. And over a period of time, you suddenly start to realize you're just not on the right path.
So what is the problem? Where does this come from? Why is it that it seems that so many people get to this stage and they have this response, this I'm not on the right path? Why has that happened?
Well, it's interesting. I think it's always happened in one way or another. Because it was at the term midlife crisis was only coined in the 60s. But I think it's been going on for a lot longer. And that specifically was around relationship breakups, divorce. But for me, and the studies that I have looked at and taken on board, is that we are programmed from the moment we're born, and actually probably beforehand in the womb, to our environment. So we learn through modelling through our parents. We learn from our external environment, whether things are good or they're bad. We're pretty much channeled from the moment we go to school in whatever is our expertise, or sometimes not even what's not our expertise. By the time we get to college, we're already expecting to set our life plan as a job and what is expected of us, to get married, perhaps, settle down, have children, have a career. We're already being programmed in a very large way. And by the time we get to 35, we're pretty much set. We're cooked, if you like. And it's only some years later that we suddenly realize that some of the things that we're doing, some of the things that we're being or saying or thinking are not our own. They are your mum's voice or your dad's voice, or it's what you were told to do. So I'm not saying that life is wrong, but there will be elements of it that we are living that are not our own. So we're not being true to ourselves.
It's the programming that we receive from, or possibly shortly before birth, that doesn't necessarily reflect who we truly are. Is that right?
Yeah, I often liken it to a computer. When you get your new shiny or laptop, let's use a laptop, nice shiny laptop, it's running really quickly and it's learning all the applications that you're putting on there. It's learning how to respond, and it starts to store information. It stores all your favorites, all your likes. It's goodness, Google stores all your clicks and goodness knows what else, doesn't it? But it slows the system down. And sometimes you'll take on viruses and bugs that will do other things, or you'll take on a program that actually conflicts with something you've already got, and they just constantly bat with each other. That's us. What I like to think of is that's what's driving the whole system just to close down, start to question what's going on. We start to shape the thing or whatever. And we just need to ask some questions. What is working for us? This application works, that one doesn't. I'm asking us to start to review the behaviors of the laptop. What is the laptop doing or not doing that's working or not working? And start to get under the bonnet of that and fix it.
You said that people tend to try to, air quotes, fix this by changing some external factor, be it the job, the relationship, the car, but that doesn't work. Or at least, so why doesn't that work, or can it work? Is that sometimes what solves the problem?
It's a good point. Yes, for some people it can, but It's the consequences of that that may not be so pleasant for the people around you. So my recommendation to anyone who's got to this point where they're just not sure what they're doing or where they're going is to pause and to start to ask themselves some of the tough questions that perhaps we don't ask ourselves. And, questions such as, what is it you really enjoy doing? What is it you don't? Who in your life is bringing you the value? And what you're doing is instead of looking at the external world, which is great, but isn't really the cause of the problem, because we can all be happy in the moment. We can all choose to be happy in the moment. We can all choose to be grateful with what we've got. But invariably, we're always looking at the external validation of who we are. And it's all about our internal growth, looking at what's really going on for us. Because one of the things that happens is we've been taking on beliefs all the way through our life, certainly from childhood. I'm not good enough. I'm not important. I'm not worthy. I'm not loved or lovable. All these are really underpinning some of the stuff that's going on for us now. And they've all come to light.
Turning that slightly on its head, what about if the belief is something like, this should be enough? Why am I unhappy? I've got the life partner, I've got the kids, I've got the house, which I really like. Okay, yeah, I've got a mortgage to pay, but I like living here. I've got the car I want. I've got a job which I've been doing for a few years. I'm well respected. I've created a name for myself. Why is that not working for me? Why is that not enough? I mean, surely it should be. I mean, what's gone wrong?
There is a school of thought, and I do subscribe to it, that our early years are all about the external. It is the relationship, the house, the career. It's about our identity. Who are we? And if you like, going back to our friend, Freud, it's all about the ego. But there comes a point when we're not nourishing our soul. It's not bringing us the love that we want for our life, because life is a long event these days. We used to be dead by the time we were 60 or 70. We're now forecast to live to 100 plus, perhaps, for some of us, if we look after ourselves. That's a long time to have a life and not be nourishing ourselves, and our focus tends to start to turn towards having a purpose. What am I here for? What can I do to help other people that will make me feel, validated or, fulfilled? It's a big word, fulfilled. So that's why it's important to start to look inwards and not outwards. So if you've got a relationship and a job and you've got all the things that seem to be fine and you're still unhappy, it's not them, is it? So the only one left is you, the individual who's asking these questions. And I'll be honest, the more I talk to people, it's the workplace that it's starting to erupt more in now. You still get people dealing with the relationship or whatever, but it's work where people are getting dissatisfied. And what do? They job hop because the grass is greener, but it's not, because what they're doing is running away from the fact that it's them that has something going on that's dissatisfying for them.
Where does someone start? Someone who is at this phase, they've got the job which they're not feeling terribly inspired by, and they've got all these feelings of, I just don't know what life's about. So these are really big questions and quite overwhelming questions. So where do you start?
Well, a number of options. I think the first thing is to get curious. What is this all about? What is going on for me that's making me feel this way? And start, we've got the internet these days. It's made so easy, isn't it? It's just start looking and having a glance round. And when I was being trained, one of the things my teacher taught me when I was a hypnotherapist was that go where you're drawn, where your passion is. You get excited about something and start investigating it, researching it, looking at it. So if you're like I was in IT, but I'm very interested in the alternative side of life. So I started to look at that, read books, watch films, attend groups, and eventually did some training on it. It's not something that I've necessarily gone into in a big way, but I was just completely curious with that whole side. I did so many courses, Jeremy, in my early days because I just knew there was something I wanted to do and I had no idea what it was. So I did reflexology. I did some sort of massage. I can't even remember what it was, hand and head massage, I think, or whatever. I did a business technical thing because I thought I wanted to do more businessy stuff. I found a company who used to do training, so it was brilliant. So I did all sorts of people type training, presentation, negotiation, all those things. Just look for what draws your attention in and follow that and see where it takes you. So that's a bit just to build into your life. But if you want something more specific and you are at work, why not find if you can see if business will pay for a coach for you? Somebody who can start to talk to you about what you really want, and how they can move you forward. Or pay for yourself and see somebody who will help explore what's going on for you. Now, I focus around the hypnotherapy because I'm looking to clear the blocks, but a lot of people will have the skills in a different way to help you through that. So it's about being curious, I think. That the first step is to start to look what's going on, ask yourself questions.
You mentioned sort of looking at what interests you. I have seen people say, the thing is, I don't really have any interests. I'd like to watch TV or I like to play computer games or something like that. So what do you say to someone like that who just doesn't think that they're interested in anything? I mean, how do they find what they might be interested in without feeling overwhelmed that you've got to start trying to get interested in everything?
Yeah, absolutely not. It's just about being curious and starting somewhere. So it's interesting that you've mentioned computer games and TV. These are just like the many other tools that we've used to numb our life out. So my recommendation to start with is what brought you sort of joy as a child? What excited you as a child? So there may have been things that you were drawn to and you were interested in at that point. Have a look at those things. Is there something there that you could perhaps bring into your adult life? I mean, obviously computer games is something that a lot of people will have done, but what's that giving them? Is it the excitement or is it the challenge? Is it perhaps that they're playing with other people on the web? So is it community that they're looking for? Understanding what that is about and then finding out how they can bring more of that into their life. Because invariably there will be something in that that will help you today. Does that make sense?
I'm just wondering, I mean, aren't children curious about lots of things and often the same things? I mean, every child seems to go through a phase where they're fascinated by dinosaurs, and every
Mm.
child seems to go through a phase where they're fascinated by space travel or something like that. So how do you identify your thing that's not just what every kid goes through because, it's exciting, it's these great big monsters, or it's traveling to the stars, or that sort of thing?
But is that true, Jeremy? Is that true? Is everybody involved like dinosaurs? I like dragons. It could be classed as dinosaurs, but there was magic involved in the dragons. I used to love those. I used to love all the, magical stories that you had out there. I still am a big fan of King Arthur and Merlin. Love it. Is everybody into that? No, probably not. So will be things that was really, really important to you as a child. And I don't know what they would be because everybody is different. And yes, some of them will be generic. Everybody was into Harry Potter, let's be honest. And that's
Some
fine.
of us
If
still
that's,
are.
yeah, I'm not saying anything. But yes, so it doesn't matter. It's just what is it and how can you bring more of that into your life now? What's the meaning for you? What did you get from it? Did it, did it make you feel good that, there was all good was conquering evil in the Harry Potter series, or did you like the fact that they worked together to get things done? Did you love the fact they had magical abilities? Well, what are your magical abilities? Because we've all got them. It's just finding which ones they are.
So can you talk us through an example, maybe to take that on? So maybe a client of yours, someone, how they've gone, what they've identified in childhood, and how that has helped them, where it's taken them to.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I'm going to use myself as an example because it's really interesting. I loved films where good always came out. So I'm a big Star Trek fan. Oh my word. And one of the first series I used to really get involved in, and I didn't realize until recently watching a documentary on it, how the person who came up with the idea wanted the human race to have resolved all conflict, wanted that they weren't fighting with each other, that they were working together. It's very rare you see them falling out with each other, certainly in the first series, that they fell out with each other. They fell out with aliens, all these other things. But there was some really big moral stories going on in that. The whole kissing a black woman, J.T. Kirk actually kissing a black woman. They were dealing with the difficulties of today in a space that was safe in the future. And I didn't realise how much of an effect that had on me until I start looking at what I'm doing today. I'm wanting people to deal with their inner conflict, their inner space, dealing with their own aliens that's within them that's not their own, looking at them resolving that conflict and feeling, that they're winning, for want of a better word, but they are coming out on top. So it's really interesting. So for me, space travel has always been an interest for me, but actually I'm exploring the inner space, not the outside, not the universal space outside Earth. I'm looking at the inner space.
And so then what does that translate to? How does that person go from identifying what might have excited them as a child and possibly then what still excites them? How do you go from translating that into whatever changes, presumably, that you need to make either to yourself or to your external environment so that you start to feel more satisfied with your lot and what you're doing?
Yeah, I think once you identify the gaps, because that's like any business, anybody who's in business will know that the business has already got this strategic direction you're going to, this aim of going somewhere, and there's where we are now. And there's always a gap between the two. Our regular appraisals every year are the same thing, just in a smaller scope. This is where you are, this is where you need to be, this is what you've got to work on. The same principle. You're just taking those very good ways of being into your personal life. So if, for me, I didn't realize it because that's the journey I've been on, but I knew something wasn't working for me internally and I needed to find the answers. So I've been on my own journey to find what was not working. And I had all those beliefs I mentioned earlier going on. And as I've worked through them, it's freed me up to bring in the things I want to bring in. So I very much wanted to work for myself. I wanted to help people clear their stuff. I don't want them to take 20 years to do it like I have. I want them to do it in a much shorter space of time and get them back out into the world and doing what they need to do. And I think for me, it's been a journey of discovery for myself. But I do think once you start to open yourself up to potential, open yourself up to the things you want to do, all you've got to do then is start to plan the next steps. So the first step is just to understand what you can do. So if I was the main wage earner in a family, quitting my job and going self-employed isn't the first thing you'll do. You'll need some steps to go through it. So you plan it like you would a career change, or that you want to move house, or you need that exotic holiday. You start to plan for what it is you want and start working on it every day. Do something towards it every day. Speak to somebody. Find out from somebody else who's done it. What do you have to do? How do you get there?
Is this a one-off process, or is this a continual thing? Is it something that you look at every 5 years, something like that? Or is this something that just people need to go through on a regular basis?
Honestly, I suspect it should be something you do review, because we sort of we sort of organise ourselves at work, don't we? We've got these goals and targets and the things we've got to do, and even within life stuff in our early years, we've got these expectations that we'll do, but actually we change. I'm not who I was at 30 or 40. I'm not that person anymore. So I think it's worth reviewing. How you do it, obviously, is up to you. But you get any good book on personal development, there will be a list of questions that you can ask. Key it into Google. You'll get a list of questions that you can ask yourself to review where you are. And I think you should do it regularly, so you're preventing the slip into, what am I doing? Where am I going? What's that all about?
Are we wrong then to talk about the midlife crisis, but actually we're talking about just, I don't know, keeping ourselves up to date? Is that the way of looking at it?
I
Back to your
do think,
computer analogy, you're kind of,
yeah,
you're installing your updates.
I think we should be installing updates. And I think the midlife crisis is a reflection of us being asleep. I mean, I actually refer to it's a wake up call. They've referred to midlife crisis as a wake up call. Hello, it's your soul knocking at your door. It's who you really are saying, come on, what do this is your life too. It's lovely for the people around you, the family, whatever, but what do you want from life? And I think we should do updates on a regular basis. I mean, in an ideal world, and we're not there, maybe in Star Trek world, we would all have somebody with us that we would meet with, on a basis to be agreed, where we can review where we are. Why not? A couple of sessions with somebody like a coach or a mentor, or a hypnotherapist, a therapeutic type intervention to say, so what's working for you and what's not working for you? There's two powerful questions straight away. What's working for you and what's not working for you? And if what's not working for you is causing you enough pain, what can you do to change it?
It's interesting you talk about pain, because someone else I spoke to said that people make change either because they want to increase pleasure, or more likely they want to stop the pain.
Exactly. And they said it beautifully. I can say no better than that. And that's what the midlife crisis is. A pain and it's not a physical pain. It could be a heartache, an emotional ache. It could be a thinking pain. It could be something else. But it's got to that point.
Do people have more than one midlife crisis? So you kind of go through this at 35, 40, and then again at 55 or something like that?
Yeah. I've done a few. And all that is that you haven't listened. You've thought you've done it and you've moved on, and that's why your updates are so important, because you need to make sure that you're not, because it's too easy to become complacent. You've just talked about being in a good place or in pain, so increasing pleasure, or getting away from pain. We will very much, our brain is programmed to move towards pleasure and away from pain. So we ignore stuff, we park it away. So if we do that and we don't deal with it all, it will come back and bite us at some point, because it will just get bigger and louder until we can no longer contain it. And then that's when it erupts and it causes us a crisis, in inverted commas. So yeah, I think you're spot on there. I do think it can happen more than once, maybe for different reasons. Do you know what I mean? But that's why it's so important for our mental health and our emotional health, possibly even our physical health, to look after ourselves and be mindful of what is or isn't working for us.
So you mentioned tons of resources out there, books, websites, all that sort of thing. Is there one or two that you think if people want to look at this in a bit more detail, they should start with something that's maybe helped you in particular, or just something that gives a really good starting point for someone who wants to dive into this a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the tools that I very often say to my clients when they're dealing with emotional stuff, but can actually work for faulty thinking, is a technique known as emotional freedom technique. Now, it's a very bizarre technique, but let me explain how it works. It's about tapping on key points around the head, chest, and underarms that I think and believe disrupts the neural pathways and the biological processes of what's going on. So let me explain. If you are feeling particularly angry about something somebody said to you, and it's wound you up and you're still thinking about it as you go to bed, by tapping on these key points around the eye and around the mouth, onto the chest, under the arms, and on top of your head, what you're doing is, whilst you're thinking about that emotion, you're feeling that emotion, the brain likes habits and expectations, and it works the same way every time. But because you're tapping and you're talking at the same time, you're interrupting those processes, and it starts to calm you down. Now, obviously, I could talk for ages about it, but what I suggest you do is look up on YouTube a guy called Brad Yates, I think he is, EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. He's got loads of videos on there to deal with stress and anxiety and anger and jealousy and money and blah, blah, blah. But the beauty of it is that he's got some positive stuff as well. So you can do the same thing, but on a positive way. So how fabulous is that? So that's a great resource. Great resource. The other one is to look for training courses. And the one that I'm currently big into is Mind Valley. He's got loads of good content on there. So from a training course perspective, he's my latest thing that I'm following, because he's got loads of good information and people working with him.
I will certainly link to all those in the show notes.
Thank you.
Kim, this has been really, really interesting stuff. If people want to talk to you more about all this sort of stuff, where can they find you?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so any questions at all on what we've talked about today, I would be more than happy to answer. I am on Facebook. It's Kim Searle, Searle, and I've got a page called Midlife Mentor. My website is www.kimsearle.co.uk. And if you want to email, it's just kim@kimsearle. I'm happy to answer any questions that your audience has.
Cool. And again, I will put all those links in the show notes. Kim, absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for yours.
The thing that really stuck out for me from Kim's interview was that the midlife crisis isn't something that only happens once and only happens at a particular time, but it's something that can happen at almost any stage and sometimes more than once. I've seen quite recently lots of references to people having a quarter-life crisis, often when they've just left higher education and they're starting work. And listening to Kim, you can understand where that might come from, how you've been building up to this career, you've been educating yourself, and then when you get there, it's just not what you were expecting. There are links to Kim's website and her book, Midlife is Not a Crisis, and all the other resources we've mentioned in the show notes, and they're at changeworklife.com/14. That's the number 14. If you haven't left a review on Apple Podcasts, please do. It really does help other people find the show. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the Change Work Life podcast. Cheers. Bye.